freedom is the right to tell what they do not want to hear. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. Tired of the same repetitive government narratives? Then wave goodbye to the distractions and rhetoric of corporate media. For this is Anti-Media Radio.
But I want to get the language right. The big government is in trouble. You're all a bunch of slaves! Bunch of slaves!
What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another.
What's your definition of media?
And now, here's your host, S.M. Gibson.
It is February the 16th, 2016, and my name is S.M. Gibson, and you are listening to Anti-Media Radio all the way from San Diego, California. Woo! Sitting next to me right now is the editor-in-chief himself of Anti-Media Radio, antimedia.org, Nick Burnaby.
Hey, what's up? Thanks for having me on. I'm glad you're here with me in San Diego, enjoying the 90-degree weather in the middle of February, and unfortunately for the rest of the people listening around the country, yeah, that's the reality we're dealing with here. But it is nice, keeps us in good spirits, and, dealing with these horrible news stories that are going on all around the world, it is nice to have some decent weather, I guess.
Yeah, you got to have something to keep you in good spirits with the state of the world going on around us. Also joined remotely back from where I'm usually wasting away at is in Birmingham, Alabama, Mr. Shannon Madden. Shannon, how are you?
Yeah, the hell with both of you. No, actually, the weather in Birmingham was very nice today. A little overcast, some light rain, but yeah, it was very warm.
Yeah, that's
you're gonna enjoy it when you eventually have to come back here, Mr. Gibson.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if I come back or not. Look, Trump's going to be.
I think your wife's got something to say about that.
At least get nice weather out of something. It's over. It's done, son. Done. So, Shannon, I have been very enthusiastic to bring you on to talk about some of the recent developments of the presidential campaign because, as you know, as we like to do, we try to keep it a little lighthearted and completely demoralizing all at the same time as we do our show on Tuesday and Thursdays here on Anti-Media. What is your impression right now of what's going on with the election and with the Don himself?
Oh, man. I mean, this really, for all wrestling fans out here, this has got to be the blockbuster election cycle that there ever has been.
Listen, I did not get WrestleMania this year because I watched that debate on Saturday night.
Yeah, forget about WrestleMania. WrestleMania is second tier compared to what the real entertainment going on here. And that's all it is at the end of the day is the entertainment. The not so entertaining part of it is going to be when one of these ass clowns is eventually elected president of the United States, leader of the free world, and the head honcho in charge telling you what to do, making your decisions, and so on and so forth. Bought and paid for by corporate America.
Well, the good thing about, I think, not only anti-media, but, the world around us is these people aren't in charge of us, Shannon. They're supposedly elected to be in charge of us, but they're not in charge of us. We're still free to make our own decisions. We're still free to do what we want and live our own lives. And, treat it as theater because that's what it is until they start dropping bombs on our head, which could be very soon because they do it to innocent people overseas every single day. And that's part of our mission here at Anti-Media is to kind of expose that behavior because I think Americans are in this mentality of, Well, as long as the bombs aren't dropping on my head, then it's okay. But if they're starting World War III in Syria, nobody bats an eye at it.
Well, we got a great story coming out tomorrow. I mean, I guess it's not so great because it's some bad things that our government is doing. Surprise, surprise, right? It's about this algorithmic assassination program that they have going on over in the Middle East. And it literally, they have drones now that are drones are making decisions to bomb people based on metadata, based on their phone GPS, based on their SIM cards in their phone, based on heat signatures and their movement patterns and stuff. And a drone now is making a decision on its own. It's like, well, this person, and one of the people that they singled out, and this came from the Snowden leaks, part of this research, was this guy, and he was a journalist for Al Jazeera. And he went to all the places where all these terrorist attacks are happening in Pakistan. So the program picked him up and they labeled him as a terrorist, which obviously wasn't true. He was a journalist. But the program picked it up and said, oh, this guy's obviously a terrorist. We got to drone bomb this guy. And in many cases, in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, other places where we're using this drone program, these drones are literally calling the shots over there, and they're dropping bombs on people without any human being behind the button saying, yeah, that person's a terrorist, drop the bomb. Even if that were the case, they're still inaccurate. And 90% of the time, they're still hitting civilians. But now we've got computer programs deciding who lives and who dies. And that this as the case is with the war in Iraq, with all the MRAPs and now the militarization of the police, the NSA, and how, no, we're going to spy on foreign terrorists, we're going to spy on foreign people, not U.S. citizens. We found out all that stuff, came home to roost, right? Well, now we're talking about this algorithmic assassination program. I don't want to go too far down the conspiracy hole here, but it's only a matter of time before they start using similar tactics on people here in the U.S., where the computer programs will sit there and designate you a homegrown terrorist or a homegrown extremist or whatever. And then next thing you know, there's a drone robot knocking on your door saying, hey, bro, time to go to jail. You're a terrorist.
But listen, hey. Speaking of the presidential race, say what we will about former presidential candidate Rand Paul. Say this for the guy. He stood on the floor of the Senate for 13 hours saying exactly what you just said, Nick.
He did, and that was great. And then the next day he turned around and said, hey, well, if you're robbing a liquor store, okay, we can drone bomb you then. It's like, wait, what?
Kiss the rings, bitch.
And, we're not going to let this happen. And if you're robbing a liquor store, it's okay. It's like, what the hell is this guy thinking?
Yeah, he was a little off base on that one. Big time.
I agree, but it was a good filibuster that he did there, and it drew
but here's the thing. Literally, though, if it wasn't for that situation, I remember living in a world talking to a relative of mine saying, "So you realize these drones are real? Like this is happening?" And this was conspiracy. Thanks to Rand Paul. I'll say this, it was no longer conspiracy. It became on the cover of Time magazine and was accepted that we live in a world where robots kill people.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not any complicated algorithm, Nick. I mean, let's be frank about it. Any kind of drone robot is going to be programmed just like a soldier or a police officer is these days. As long as it's the proper shade of white, don't shoot at it or don't kill it. Everything else is pretty much fair game.
Bruce's family would probably disagree with that statement, Shannon.
This is true. The Florida police officers need to work on the tactics a little bit better and use some of the more approved nationwide tactics.
Well, nothing happened to that cop.
Oh, well, nothing happened to any of them. I mean,
Because they shot a white person in the face that was unarmed. It wasn't like the cop.
Well, but he was messing with pot, man. Pot is a dangerous hallucinogenic narcotic.
He was injecting the joint.
Yeah, we don't want to let people inject joints.
Speaking of injecting joints, I want to bring on the wonderful Mr. Kevin Knight, who is usually sitting right to my direct right, but now he is across the country this evening. Kevin, how are you doing, sir?
Hey, man, doing great. Good to be on with you folks.
Pleasure to be talking to you. And also, the wonderfully astute Miss Claire Burnish.
Hi.
Hey, Miss Claire.
Howdy.
Hey, Miss Claire.
What's up?
Oh,
You?
there. trying to beat the heat out here. It's crazy, man. It's like literally, it's too hot. It's like 90.
You shut the hell up, God! Shut up! Shut
I don't even
up!
want to hear it. That is not a thing to complain about. I mean, sunshine. Come on, I'm like looking forward to the supposed forecast of sunshine on Friday.
It's going to be a toasty 60 degrees out there, right? That's what you told me.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a real heat wave out here.
It's like freezing here. That's winter stuff.
But see, Claire, whatever you're dealing with right now, it's not worse than a nuclear winter. So just enjoy it, because that's coming soon enough.
Yeah, I mean, then that's unfortunately the real prospect that we have sitting in front of us here, because as Claire, you covered today, this scenario going down in Syria really could lead into the major war, and I don't want to be fear-mongering here, but we're talking.
I do.
The possibility of World War III coming at our doorstep.
It's coming.
The next president, very well could be presiding over the very real scenario of World War III.
He's the Antichrist.
Yeah,
it's coming.
And Hillary Clinton and most of the Republicans on the other end of the aisle there. I think would pretty much be willing to put this country into that scenario.
In all due respect to Hillary Clinton, when I said that the next president's going to be he, I do include her in there.
Yeah, I mean, this is. I think this is coming around the bend rather quickly. I mean, how many countries and groups and everybody else are fighting in this one country right now in Syria? I mean, I can't even begin to try to explain this in a couple minutes, because there are too many players to even get out the basics.
It's so complicated. There's there's over like 70 countries now that have thrown their hat in the ring in Syria. 70 countries. I mean, this is just crazy.
Okay, Shannon and Claire have both been on the radio with me for a long time. Shannon especially has heard me rant and rant and rant about Saudi Arabia. And I feel like we're kind of at that threshold, like this is about to go down. Like, and to me, it's like, okay, I'm over it. We already know this is coming. How do you people not realize this is happening? They are involving themselves and interjecting themselves into World War III. And Turkey's doing the exact same thing, too. And we talked to Justin King from the Fifth Column about this at length, about Turkey's involvement. For me, it's more the Saudi side. For Justin, I think it was more the Turkey side. Kevin, I've heard you talk about Turkey a lot. Where do you think this plays in, and do you think this is really going down that path of war?
I mean, I don't see how it couldn't. It seems inevitable at this point. And you guys mentioned Saudi Arabia. They've been tactically behind the scenes, funding various sides of the conflict. But, now they're openly entering, and of course they're claiming this is so-called war games. We all know what this was, or what this is. The U.S. did something similar when we invaded Kuwait and went from Desert Shield to Desert Storm. We've seen this 1,000 times, and I think if we've ever been close, I feel like I have to keep moving the goalposts back, but every time we have one of these big conflicts, it feels like we are literally the closest we've ever been to World War III. Even Russia now is warning the U.S., U.S. and Saudi Arabia to stay away completely. We heard earlier that they've mentioned this is almost basically like a new Cold War that to me looks really like we're on the verge of going hot. I hope it doesn't come to that, but it seems like, who knows? There's a lot of strange words, a lot of strong rhetoric coming out of every candidate, and I think we'll continue to see that on up to the election. We still have a few months left, so who knows which direction it's going to go. But I'm sure that we can expect more rhetoric that's aiming towards that way from all the candidates.
Do you see? Excuse me, real quick, Claire. Kevin, do you see any of the candidates, like any of them, Bernie, Trump? I mean, Rand's out, and even if that even mattered, do you see any of these candidates steering us away from that hotbed of violence?
No, not a bit. It would be unlike them. Definitely. Even Donald Trump, it was not too long ago, he was agreeing. I want to say it was with Rand suggesting that in fact that we needed to stay out of that area completely. But then on the other hand, they turn around and completely endorse the other direction and want to completely bomb the whole area entirely. So no, I don't think at this point that we would that anybody's going to go any other way.
Well, let's not forget Iran too. you had pretty much around the whole every single Republican candidate, and I'm sure on both sides of the fence, along with Bernie and Hillary, everybody was all hell up about bombing Iran. Some more than others.
That drum for a long time. Like, I feel like once they finally, break that bat across their leg, then World War III is about to commence. Because, we heard the Iraq rumors forever, and we saw it a couple of times. It finally happened. We've heard the Syria rumors, but Iran's always kind of seemed like the golden egg in the background. Like, that's the one they wanted more than any of them. Like, that was the final check mark on the list.
Yeah, and we've
already... and you have to wonder, is it just about oil? It can't be.
It can't be.
I mean, it's probably not just about oil, but, we've already toppled the Iranian government once, and we've tried several times after that, and it was over British oil interests, and you got that brings up several other questions regarding, what our foreign policy is really about. Are we even going after our own national interests? I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to go overthrow countries to help out our own oil corporations. It's another thing where the CIA goes in to topple government to help out British oil corporations. I mean, the loyalty to the country, I think, is far gone when it comes to foreign policy.
Well, that's been that way forever.
Yeah, it's not about our national interests. It's not even about our own national corporations. I mean, I think it's a global cabal of corporate interests that control U.S. foreign policy. We're the bulldog for these extremely rich bastards that are running the show for real.
Forgive me to sound...
our military is the one that does the grunt work for these assholes that make all the money. Doesn't matter if they're from America, or if they're from Israel, or if they're from England. It's our guys that go in and do the grunt work, and they get to reap the benefits. We talked about this last night on the radio show, on Monday Night Show, is the fact that our empire is not like other empires from the past. The U.S. empire, back in the day, in the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, the Egyptian Empire, all these the Persian Empire, the people, the citizens used to reap the benefits. They'd get the spoils of the war. They'd go pillage countries, they'd go invade territories, and the people would share in those benefits. Now we're dealing with the whole new brand of empire where the people are financing it. The empire is financed through socialist type of ideas where it's funded through taxpayer money, and all the proceeds are privatized to these extremely rich corporate interests or just extremely rich individuals or trusts or whatever you want to call them. We're dealing with the most unjust empire we've ever seen. In history, we've seen empires where the people would share in those things and they'd get the rewards. Yeah, they were bad. The Roman Empire was bad. All these other empires were bad too. But at least the people that were paying the bills, the taxes and all that would share in those benefits. Now we're being bankrupted. The American middle class is being decimated. Our deficits are going through the roof. Meanwhile, these corporations are seeing, some of the highest profits they've ever seen. I mean, this is crazy.
But here's what it is. I mean, Shannon, one day, I promise you, Shannon, we're going to have literally an entire show dedicated to wrestling. But this goes right back to it. Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Hulk Hogan, the New World Order. Everything with our government goes back to wrestling.
Think about... I just really have to say this. Think about how war used to be. Think about the last World War. I mean, it was all about there were clear, or at least clearer, enemies. This time, everybody's the enemy, including our own country. It's like all of these people have their own interests and basically the corporate interests in mind. They're all fighting each other for very selfish reasons. Nobody is very clearly aligned. I mean, the U.S. is funding the same militias that are fighting our militias. I mean, it's such a mess.
You're an enemy, Claire. You're an enemy. I'm an enemy. Nick's an enemy. Shane's an enemy. Kevin's an enemy. Because dissension has become how they view people that may or may not be terrorists.
Well, yeah, you got to rile up the, and this is exactly why Trump is so dangerous. And we talk about this pretty often. The only thing I like about Trump is that he's a thorn in the side of the establishment. But very similar to the Nazi Germany thing. Riling up the people in the country, and you sow distrust between your neighbors and between others. People that are Hispanic or people that are Muslim or whatever. You sow up that distrust. You build a police state at home because you make this domestic threat so big, and then that solidifies your base so that you can go out and do this stuff overseas, and you can get away with these crazy big wars and stuff. And people are so afraid of their own shadow, of their own neighbors, that they won't dare question it. you turn your own neighbors into snitches, and that's exactly what the DHS has been encouraging for how long. Have they been saying that if you see something, say something? I mean, man, they love the snitch.
But here's what I want to know. Like, this is what I want to know about Trump, and this is where my interest in Trump comes in, is with what he said on Saturday night to Jeb Bush, the brother of George Bush. Do we live in an atmosphere where the entire country for the past 15 years gradually has built up to a point that pretty much we predominantly all go, yeah, I don't believe any of that stuff they say. But they won't say it to their neighbors or their friends because they're afraid they'll be crazy. So it's like, yeah, I get Iraq was a lie, but I'm a good Republican or I'm this, so I'm not going to admit that. Or yeah, I don't really believe the way 9/11 went down. That's kind of, that's real suspect. But you're afraid of being judged and saying you're crazy for that. And you've got this crazy lunatic on TV being like, well, my brother kept us safe. He's like, well, your brother caused it. So it's like, is that good for America that you've got this guy doing this? And now everybody's like, oh, I thought this for a long time. Finally, I can let this out? Or is this more theater?
I don't know. To me, it's a mixed bag with Trump. I really don't. I don't think he's like that.
No, he's Hitler, but
I don't think he's like that really highly controlled candidate like Marco Rubio or.
No,
like
I don't
Clinton.
either.
And on one hand, like I said, you've got Trump saying this really dangerous stuff about Muslim Americans and about Latinos. On the other hand, and today he got praised, and I think Claire is actually covering this story tomorrow. Today, Trump was praised by Code Pink. Code Pink is probably one of the most far-left anti-war groups that are still active in the United States that have been constantly calling Bush a liar for what he did in Iraq and all that stuff. They're praising Trump today.
Everybody that listens to this radio program knows how I feel about Donald Trump. I don't even have to elaborate any longer. What he said to Jeb Bush about that war, I was applauding. I thought it was great. I completely agreed with everything that came out of that man's mouth.
Exactly. And so with Trump, you're dealing with a mixed bag, man. He's a loose cannon. He says some things that are really dangerous and completely wrong. And then on the other hand, he says something that he's telling the truth about Iraq. I mean, Bush did lie. And maybe it wasn't Bush per se, but the Bush administration lied about Iraq. They fed us false information. The CIA, former head of the CIA, I think his name is Michael Morell, he was in charge of the CIA at the time when Bush was in power. He came out and said, look, the intelligence that we had, that we gave to the Bush administration was misrepresented when Bush went on TV and tried to sell that war in Iraq. It was completely misrepresented. Therefore, basically what he's saying is like, Bush lied about Iraq. Bush lied, people died. I mean, this is a typical talking point.
We know that.
The whole administration lied, and it was actually found to be a lie by the UN, who actually looked into and investigated it at the time. It was found to be a lie. They found that there were no weapons of mass destruction. I mean, this is all factual record. So to have all these people booing Trump for actually pointing out the truth is really something special.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. Everything Rubio said was getting these loud cheers. Everything Bush said was getting these loud cheers.
This is where we're at. It is WWE, because every time you heard a cheer, it was equivalent to Roman Reigns being cheered. People hate that guy. It's stupid. It's sick. Nobody likes it. The guy that gets booed, that's who the fans actually like.
That's not the first time that he's given this. That he's really come at Bush and Jeb. It was just a few months ago. He mentioned specifically, if I'm not mistaken, that the Bush administration knew that the attacks were coming. Now, I don't think they knew exactly on what day, depending on which side of that you believe. But there was a memorandum sent to the White House, and that's exactly what Trump was actually referencing here a few months ago. And so he's really hit hard at this. I'm surprised that he actually brought this back up again.
Well, there's a lady, Kevin, real quick, that I want to bring this up, and I'm doing my best to get her as a guest on the show, and hopefully we can make that happen. But she was actually the CIA liaison to Iraq between 97, I believe, and 2003. And she, for a fact, knew that this attack was going to happen. She tried to warn people that it was going to happen, and she was told to keep her mouth shut. And who she was told, this is from what she says, who I went to, she said it came from power so high that it could only be one of three people. And at the time, those three people would have been the president, the vice president, and the secretary of defense, and that would be George Bush and/or Dick Cheney and/or Donald Rumsfeld. Before 9/11, this was in August of 2001, that knew that it was coming.
Oh, right. And that actually, they'd put a few different warnings out, to my understanding. I believe I've seen one of the flyers that they had actually published online. Say they published, they had circulated, of course, had been leaked and put online, warning that, in fact, that they knew that basically the planes would be used to be hijacked and actually flown into skyscrapers. That's why I can't help but think, I'm sure we've all seen it repeated times that Bush and, what's her name, Rice got up there and repeated that same line that nobody could possibly have ever known that terrorists would hijack planes. It's just so ironic when you know that they at least knew at some point, or expected actually, that it would be coming. It's just infuriating hearing that.
Pretty much the most common terror tactic that exists, right? Before the suicide attacks started happening after 9/11. I mean, hijacking planes was basically the most common form of terrorism that was being deployed.
Really, it was almost like the United States was waiting for a flight number or something. That's absolutely crazy. And I love this exchange. And he has the gall to go after my brother. And Trump replies, "The World Trade Center came down during your brother's reign."
I'm sorry, we know what I think about Donald Trump, but I was on both of my feet with one fist pumping in the air when that came out of his mouth. Did you just say that to Jeb Bush? That your brother...
Suddenly, Andre the Giant becomes a good guy, know? That's what happened.
That's what we're dealing with. The guy we hate the most is all of a sudden wait, did he just say that? Is he?
And at the end of the day, it's all a big puppet show. It's all fake. It's all scripted. When the lights are off, the camera's shut down. They all go backstage in the green room, enjoy a martini, slap each other on the back,
that's it.
Meet each other for dinner later on, and then they get out and do it again in a few weeks and viciously attack one another. And next time we're going to see suddenly Rubio's going to come in with a zinger, and everybody's going to be chasing after him. It's all a puppet show.
I think they wanted Rubio to come in with those zingers, and he just ain't smart enough. He's not clever enough. He's not their guy.
They're going to give him the right script. As soon as he gets a good script writer like Hillary Clinton's got, it's just Hillary's kind of lost her focus. She's
Hillary's way more polished than Rubio, though, I think.
I don't know, man. I'd like to see the two of them debate now. I don't think that'll actually ever happen.
Honestly.
Nick does, but...
but what would
I know that's Nick's pony,
What does the debate consist of? Let me... Hold on, everyone. Let me reenact a Marco Rubio-Hillary Clinton debate for everybody real fast. Moderator, so what do you think about bombing people overseas? Hillary, let's go. Yeah, I would do that. Marco, yeah, couldn't agree more. I think we should bomb them all in the debate.
And then Hillary would say, my bombs would be painted in better colors. They'd be
at least softer. Bernie is pretending that he believes in peace, even though I believe he bombed people. Hillary's not even getting out the tie-dye.
Hillary's more hawkish than half the Republicans, man. I mean,
more than half.
The Democratic Party has shifted far to the right thanks to the Obama administration. Obama came in on a very left-wing peace,
just like Bernie,
a very peace-promising platform, and Obama has been one of.
But compared to Bush, that campaign's going to sound like some peace platform.
Obama has been a very destructive candidate on foreign policy. I mean, we're talking about a guy that won the Nobel Peace Prize, basically delivering us to the doorstep of World War III right now. And that's Obama. And so the Democratic Party has to shift over.
It's not his fault.
They have to shift over. And because there isn't a Republican that they're running against right now, well, the Republican Party shifted far right on foreign policy, and therefore, Hillary Clinton is like the standard bearer right now. Hillary Clinton is the quote-unquote moderate, and she is extremely hawkish. She's more hawkish than Donald Trump. She's already said she wants a no-fly zone in Syria, which
outside of Rubio, I think she's more hawkish than everybody.
Yeah, I mean, her and Rubio are the two single hawkish candidates, and coincidentally,
And
they're
Jeb
both,
is too, but Jeb don't count.
Jeb doesn't count because he's got no chance. But Hillary and Rubio are both the two most hawkish candidates, and coincidentally, they're also the two establishment picks.
And ironically,
Imagine
they get their foreign policy advice from the exact same consulting firm.
Yep, exactly.
Let's go ahead and go to a call right now. Area code 662. Welcome to Anti-Media Radio. This is your host, SM Gibson. Tell us your name and where you're calling from tonight. Area code.
Hello.
Hello. Don't look like we're going to get that call through.
Technology.
Yeah,
we got to give everyone the rundown of how we're going to operate, these calls. Anyone out there wanting to call in, if you do call in, what's the number again?
It's 718-717-8296.
If you call in, keep your microphone on mute, keep the radio muted behind you, and we'll come to you based on your area code, and then we go from there. And then you can say whatever the hell you want. Look, they're calling back in now.
Let's go ahead. Let's try this one more time. Area code 662. Welcome to Anti-Media Radio. This is your host, SM Gibson. Tell us your name and where you were calling from this evening.
We lost him again.
Well, they're never going to call.
Technology.
Yep, it's never going to happen again.
This is why we need to do away with technology, man. Completely. Right?
Screw it. Shovels, hose, and rakes.
We
should all be sitting around a fire having this conversation right now.
Cans, we get a couple organic hemp strings, tie the cans together, and then we can all talk to each other throughout the country and all over the world like that. I'm
down with that.
Stuff. We don't need Skype. We don't need this radio, internet stuff.
Hemp internet.
Well, and here's the worst part, and how as ironic as that sounds, Shannon. Great comment, man. As ironic as it sounds, who was it? Einstein that warned about World War III. He's like, I don't know what World War III is going to be fought with,
but World War IV
will be fought with sticks and
rocks.
And that's something that we got to pay attention to, man. This shit that is going on right now with Russia being involved, and we all know Russia deeply behind the scenes. China backs Russia and all that stuff. This is some fire that we do not want to be playing with, dude. Like the last, who was it? It was under a Republican, Reagan, that helped bring down the wall and all that shit. He gets credit for that. Peacemaking.
How do you explain the wall coming down and Reagan getting credit for it, which it came down technically under George Sr.'s administration, and yet Jimmy Carter doesn't get the credit for the Iranian hostages coming out because they were coming out right as Reagan had his hand on the Bible becoming president. It was a split screen, very dramatic deal, and they're like, "Oh, look at Reagan! They're scared of Reagan." But it's like Jimmy Carter did that.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's all media manipulation, and look at this shit with Reagan, where he gets credit for taking down the wall, and now the main.
I do think Reagan did that. I will say this. Look, I think Reagan did take down that wall.
Yeah.
I think Reagan took down that wall because he spent. This is the one thing conservatives and Republicans don't want to admit to themselves. I believe for a fact Ronald Reagan took down that wall, and he spent us into the ground doing it. And it's a miracle this country did not go bankrupt in the 80s with how much money he spent. Mr. Small Government, Ronald Reagan, spent, FDR style spent.
Here's the thing that's so ironic here is that, Reagan, the Republican hero, gets credit for taking down one wall. And now the biggest talking point in the Republican Party is how they're going to build up another wall, right?
Build that wall!
This is the thing that really cracks me up. We're right here. Me and SM Gibson are sitting right here, 7 miles from the border. We could see Tijuana from the window here. And I'll tell you something. There's a big-ass wall there. In fact, there's 3 of them with barbed wire, and they're 15 feet tall. There's a huge-ass wall there.
Listen.
All this shit about building a wall is a total distraction. The shit about Mexicans coming in, destroying the economy, and messing up the country and all that, it is complete bullshit. It's all a distraction, and they're building on this platform because they don't want to admit the real truth about why the economy is seriously going into this huge issue. And there's so many real factors going on We could talk about the Federal Reserve. We could talk about globalism. We could talk about the NAFTA, the TPP, and all the real issues going on with the economy. But instead, they want to sit here and say, "Oh, it's the Mexicans and it's the Muslims. Build the wall. Economy's fixed."
I'm going to tell you something.
Problem solved.
I grew up in Alabama, lived in Nashville, lived in Seattle, been around the world, never, ever been to the American-Mexican border. Nick Burnaby took me to it. You always hear this rhetoric of, we need a wall, we need a wall, we need a wall. So I was given the privilege of going to the border, actually on the Mexican side of the border. And guess what? There's a wall there
There's
already.
a wall there. There's 3 walls.
I've seen it. And it's big. And you ain't getting around it. It ain't happening. So this rhetoric, as Nick said, like, for Nick, I think this is something that it's just, to him, it's common knowledge. But for somebody like me and the rest of the world, like, you don't know that's there. I saw it, and I was like, whoa, wait, why do we need to build a wall again? Because I'm looking at it. It's already been built. Like, what's all this about? This exists. What do you need? Like, what do you need to do? Because it's there. And this is pretty totalitarian, what I'm looking at, and kind of scary, because you see birds that fly on both sides of the wall, and the birds are free to do what they want. They can go to the United States, they can go to Mexico, but you see people caged up like animals, children on the beach, families on the beach, caged up like animals. But we need more walls. Let's get more walls. Why not?
Dude, I think if we just built walls around everything, that would stimulate the economy.
I saw a story today.
At least for construction
Saw
jobs.
a story today about somebody was talking about building a wall around Alabama. Go ahead and solve it. We'll let all the cousins marry each other, and we'll have to climb it, I guess, to get our lottery tickets if we want to go to Georgia for
Unfortunately, it seems like a lot of Americans don't even want to do construction jobs because that work is below them. We'll have to import people from Mexico to come build all the walls for us.
I'll give Trump this. He can get some construction done, and I'm sure he'll hire some Mexicans to do it.
Exactly, man. So, this to me is just a big distraction, the whole wall building
Yeah,
stuff.
it's stupid. It exists.
The Republicans sit there and they take credit for taking down the Berlin Wall, and they hold up Reagan on some kind of pedestal, and they turn around and say, oh, well, now our new platform is building walls instead of tearing them down. I was like, dude, you guys need to take a hike with that rhetoric. Bullshit.
Listen, when there's a wall in Germany, it was meant to keep people in, but when there's a wall here, it's to
make
keep
freedom
people out.
It's to create freedom, right?
Because, let me tell you something. When a Muslim kills somebody, that's because they're a hateful Satanist. But when somebody from the United States kills somebody, as long as they're getting a government paycheck, because that includes a cop, like, as long as you're getting a paycheck from the United States government.
Or, if you're overseas getting in Iraq, taking a check from the U.S. government.
As long as you get a paycheck from the U.S. government and you kill someone, that's for freedom.
Yeah,
that's what that's about.
Defending our rights,
that's
apparently. It. Even though our rights have nothing to do with Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia, Libya.
That's it.
You name the country. We've got bases in over 100 of them. Apparently, all that stuff is out there to defend our freedom. The reason why American cops kill 1,000 U.S. citizens a year is just to keep you free. Apparently,
well, it is.
But if anyone comes over here and shoots somebody up, it's because they're just completely evil and they hate our way of life and they hate our richness.
Death is evil as long as your paycheck says U.S. government at the top left-hand corner. Otherwise,
well, let me ask you a question, fellas, real quick. Claire, are you still online?
Yeah, I'm here.
Claire, you live close to the Canadian border.
Sort of.
And have you seen, well, but you've lived close enough, and I'm sure you've traveled around enough. Have you ever seen the wall that exists between the United States and Canada?
There is no wall there. There is no wall in the north. I lived in Buffalo for like 9 years, and we could just, and this was before the passport thing was required. We could just literally get up at 6 in the morning and drive across the border with no problem.
I've done it since the passport thing, Claire. I've been over the Canadian border since the whole passport thing. You know what they did? They took me inside, they looked at my driver's license, they ran it and go, yeah, he don't need a passport, let him through. That was it. Canadian border.
Well, you are rather white.
So oh, yeah,
I'm just throwing that out there.
I did have
you're pretty white.
That may have helped.
It didn't hurt, brother. It didn't hurt.
When me and Nick went across to Mexico, they were just like, yeah, whatever, you can come through. We don't care.
Yeah, man. I mean, this stuff has just become it's blown so out of.
I flashed my InfoWars card.
And like I said, back to the whole Trump thing. It's a mixed bag, dude. Like on this issue of building the wall, he's completely off base. He's completely blowing into the distraction. Who knows if he really means what he's saying or if he's just trying to get elected. On the other hand, when he does say this real shit about Iraq, when he is going after Bush the way he's been going after him, at the same time you got to say, okay, well, he's saying the right stuff at this moment in time. And I couldn't believe that Code Pink was actually also coming out and saying that, like, you know what, like, we're praising Trump at this point. It's crazy, but we're doing it. And I mean,
but he was right. That's a scary part. Like, he was right about that. Like, as much as I, of all people, do not want to agree with a single word that has ever come out of Donald Trump's mouth, ever. What he said to Jeb Bush that night, I was like, where has this been? It was great. I mean,
well, this goes for anybody, though. You talk enough shit long enough, and eventually something you say is going to be right. So, there is that. I mean, we could just chalk it up to the fact that the Don got a little lucky at that particular point in the conversation and was able to punch him real quick and jerk back,
When Ron
what kind of world are we living in where we're having to, where it's so odd to have to at least praise the statements and having to defend the statements that, for the most part, the rest of the world seems to know, except for most of the people at home and our neighbors, of course, watching, who would have booed right along with everybody there. I mean, he was obviously right. We all cheered, I'm sure, when he at least said that. Not for Donald Trump, but at least that somebody was there to give it to him and who they were actually giving it to.
Oh, I was been cheering for John Cena. I mean, it was just a character on TV, but I agreed with what he was saying to the audience at that point.
Right.
Yeah, and that's all it was.
So, onto this other platform that the Republicans are picking up, and it's not only Trump here. There was some comments that Carson made today saying that a Muslim would have to be schizophrenic to embrace American values, whatever those values. I guess I'm still looking for the definition of what American values are. Because,
rape and pillage!
I mean, empire, overthrowing governments. Violence is like the solution to everything, I guess,
And basketball.
Censorship.
The other theme that has emerged out of the Democratic, out of the Republican primary is that, Muslims are like some big threat and stuff. And I mean, this isn't the first time we've seen this kind of trend happening, right? We've seen this happen constantly throughout history in the United States. Irish were the problem at one point. Italians. During the 60s, it was black people, and that continues on today. And now it's Muslims. And again, the hilarious thing and maybe not hilarious, and it's really sad, but it's ironic. Republican policies are what is creating this influx of Muslims coming into the United States. We're over there bombing Iraq. We're over there overthrowing Libya. We're conquering all these countries.
I'm going to step in on this one, Nick. This ain't Republican policies, man. This is government policies.
True.
Every one of them.
Yeah,
this ain't
Republican, this ain't Democrat. Let's not sit here and go, oh, it's the Bushes. This is everybody, dude.
That's true.
Let's not forget George W. Bush ran as a presidential candidate in 1999 saying, Bill Clinton has policed the world, and I am going to stop us from policing the world because Bill Clinton's been so horrible at it. And then we had George W. Bush. This is both sides of the aisle. This is the whole Republican Democrat. Oh, which candidate are you going to pick? Lunatic to think there's any difference at this point. There's no difference. They're all on the same team. There's people against those people.
Yeah, you're completely right, man. And I mean, there's one angle I want to bring up here real quick. Obama has dropped under the Obama administration. And this is only in 2015, dropped over 23,000 bombs on Muslim-majority countries.
Nobel Peace Prize.
Exactly. And so, you're right. It's a policy of both
Hey,
parties.
Jordan,
it's a
we're number
policy
23.
of the government as a whole. And, of course, underlying this is the military-industrial complex. Most likely it's a profit motive, the resource war, the geopolitics involved. The people that make all these weapons make a bunch of money. The people that secure the resources make a bunch of money. But the Republican Party has kind of taken this up as part of its platform now, as this anti-Muslim rhetoric. And that, to me, is the most dangerous thing coming out of this primary, because we all know, no matter who wins, most likely we're not going to see much of a difference happening, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, whether it's Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump. It's not going to make too big of a difference, right? But what's really dangerous is that, the Republican Party has taken up this anti-Muslim rhetoric as part of it, almost as part of its policy platform.
Hillary Clinton says, I love Muslims, and then she turns around and goes, I'll still bomb them all. So what damn difference does that make? I'll still bomb them all.
Exactly, and probably more of them.
And
She'd probably be a lot even worse than Obama.
She probably would. And listen, Bernie loves the Muslims, but he's got no problem with bankrupting someone that's in this country for what he wants to do.
And, Bernie Sanders, as much as I think, and we said this last night on the radio show, as much as I think Bernie Sanders is a way better candidate than Hillary Clinton is on the Democratic side, he has repeatedly said that he's open to using Saudi Arabia and empowering Saudi Arabia and other Gulf Sunni quote-unquote allies to go take care of business in the Middle East. And we all kind of know how that's playing out. Look at what's going on in Iraq and Syria and ISIS. ISIS is an outgrowth of Saudi Arabian policy and Saudi Arabian
How much more
ideology.
empowered does Saudi Arabia need to be? Let's see. Let's talk about empowerment. 15 of the 19 hijackers on 9/11 were Saudi Arabian. We're going to bomb your enemies now and not do shit to you. If that ain't empowerment, I don't know what is. I would love to be able to go kill some people and be like, you're going to go hurt the people that I hate because I killed some people? That's called empowerment. Saudi Arabia's got the red carpet in front of them and have for a long time. So thanks, Bernie. Let's give Saudi some more influence because there ain't enough. Bernie Sanders is an idiot. They're all idiots. Every single candidate on that stage is a moron. And the fact that anybody believes anything different is a complete buffoon. Oh, he's got messy hair and he's kind of funny. He sounds Jewish. He's like Larry David. I love Larry David. I'd vote for him first because you know what? Curb Your Enthusiasm's hilarious. People dying overseas, not so funny.
The actor that played Leon actually would make a great president.
I'm telling you, Leon for president.
It was only back in November of last year that we inked another multi-billion-dollar arms deal with Saudi Arabia too.
Oh yeah, we've been doing it. We had the $100 billion arms deal in 2010 or whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean it's $80 billion at one here, $5 billion there, $4 billion here. And we're flushing these guys full of weapons and ammunition and arms and technology and advisors. I mean, they're even I saw reports from the
New World Order does exist, and guess what? It's not people in dark, seedy corners doing the satanic rituals. It's right in front of your face. It's Saudi Arabia. It's Israel. It's the United States. It's happening right in front of you with foreign policy.
Exactly.
It's the military-industrial complex, man. It's what Eisenhower warned about. It's not tied just to the U.S. I mean, it is, but its tentacles reach way beyond the U.S., unfortunately. It's funny you guys mentioned about the arms going to these countries. Mubarak actually received a ton, a shit ton of weapons from the U.S. while the U.S. was...
he was their favorite son until they turned their back on him.
Right. Well, we were funding him back, and, we knew that you had a color revolution kind of being planned as we were still continuing to send arms. So we knew it was a good possibility, from my understanding, that Mubarak would be gone, but yet all these weapons continue to flow that way.
Yeah, Egypt. Egypt is another case. Egypt is
that's
mostly governed by the military, right? And the
that was before Mubarak. See, Mubarak was a bit of a dictator in Egypt, and we backed him, so it was cool. And then the whole
Morsi came to power, and wanted to basically start implementing a lot of hard-line Islamic values and basically amending the Constitution. So the military did step in. And came in and basically imprisoned a lot of the Muslim Brotherhood, and to my knowledge, at one point in time, sentenced a lot of them to death. I don't know if that's actually taken place or not, but yeah, they're still living under, to my understanding, a military dictatorship, which, I won't say the U.S. sponsored the original overthrow or the uprising, but the U.S. definitely had their fingers in it.
They did, Kevin, and this is how I know they did is because
I believe they did too. I use those terms very lightly, but
to
I'm
me
sure
it goes back to Gaddafi in Libya. When Gaddafi got whacked, or whatever you want to call it, it was just like, can you believe these insurgents did this? Like, this is crazy, these insurgents. Like, oh, we didn't have anything to do with this. No, we weren't there. No, the United States wasn't even in that country when that happened. And now we got people running for president, and who is like, I did that shit. I made that happen.
You remember briefly in Syria when the rebels got when they found out that some of the rebels were the ones using chemical weapons, all of a sudden they were being called insurgents. Remember that? For like a month they called them insurgents, and now it's back to rebels. Claire, I remember. Claire actually covered this, I think. And the language changed overnight because they found out that it was some of the Syrian rebels that may or may not have been the U.S.-backed rebels. We don't know that for sure, but one of them used chemical weapons.
I'll say they did it. I don't need facts.
Literally, the first report that came out about these rebels using chemical weapons, the language, and it was from the AP, the language changed from rebels to insurgents, and they changed it overnight.
But it was like across the board. It was across the board. They all suddenly started using that language instead. Like you and I, we saw it at the same time. We were like, wait, what the hell?
Yeah, it was like, wait, they've been calling these guys rebels the whole time because rebels, it's kind of like a positive, it's kind of like a positive.
And you people wonder why I want to talk about the WWE for an hour. Like, you're talking about this crazy stuff. Like, we live in this world, like, we're funding people using chemical weapons. And then when they use them, we're like, oh, well, I don't know about that. Like, that's the world we live in. We fund people. We use chemical weapons on other countries. We kill millions and millions of people. Guess what? There's nothing at this point that can be done outside of everybody standing in front of the White House. Like, I don't know what to do.
It's tough, man, and we got our own cops using banned chemical weapons by the Geneva Convention on our own people. I mean, the CS gas, the smoke, the crowd dispersant gas that they used during the riots, that shit is a chemical weapon that's banned by the Geneva Convention. It's a war crime if it's used by one country against another. But apparently, when our own militarized domestic cops use it against the protesters, it's because they're protecting our freedom.
It goes back to who you get your paycheck from. That's it. If you get your paycheck from a taxpayer source, then you're free to kill and maim and harm and do what you will because it is for freedom.
Now if Gaddafi used smoke grenades against his people, that's enough evidence there just to go overthrow his government.
Do you realize I could start a web page tomorrow that's all completely flipped the other way around? And I could paint every story in the United States that's coming out of Russia and talk about maybe the situation with Eric Garner and say that there were these Russian forces that choked a man out on camera, a man that didn't have a gun, okay? And the United States would go, how dare those Russians do that to this man? I could paint every single story that goes on in this country to the American people, and they would go, oh my God, they're monsters. And guess what?
And then you reveal it's like, no, this is actually American.
It's called propaganda.
And they did it to a black guy, and they'd be like, oh, okay, that's okay then.
Yeah, it's all propaganda.
Well, he deserved it.
I ain't learned nothing. I already know it. It's how you sell the propaganda, period.
Yeah, there's been there's been varying reports, and Claire actually covered this today, about there was hospitals bombed yesterday in Syria, 50 people dead. The Syrian government is saying it was done by the Americans or the U.S.-backed forces. The opposition is saying, oh, it was the Syrian and the Russian-backed forces. We don't know. But what we do know is that the media is coming out in full force saying, oh, the Russians did it, 50 people dead. Now it's a big deal. But, same thing happened in Afghanistan where we clearly hit a hospital. We killed almost 50 people. And
Oh, we
just
didn't
like,
do that. They
there
didn't
was
cover that.
it was headline news for about 2 hours, and then it was buried underneath the rest of the, that was it.
Kanye West had a record coming out. We can't talk about people dying overseas.
Well, yeah, and the Grammys too. The Grammys were last
Yeah.
night. All that.
Well, I was gonna say about the hospital too. The thing is, when the hospitals first got bombed, the media immediately jumped and said that it was Russia that did it, like all over the place. And oddly enough, Doctors Without Borders didn't even say that at first. They didn't say that for hours. And they finally came out with a statement saying that, it was Russia and the Russia Allied forces. And it seemed so suspect that I actually called them to make sure that that was their official position. And when I asked, they didn't even say that, Russia-backed forces. They said it was Syrian government-backed forces. So, I mean, it's all about narrative.
Sounds like they were rushing to that narrative.
Yeah, I mean, they were Russian-backed forces. It just took forever. But, the U.S. has a habit of targeting, or U.S. allied forces, I should say, has a habit of targeting these hospitals. So it's not outside the realm of possibility.
Give me some Saudi Arabia's done this in Yemen.
And
like multiple times.
And that's the thing, dude. That's the thing here is that, we're talking about these hospitals being bombed.
With U.S. bombs in Yemen by the Saudis.
But yeah, there's been over 100 health facilities targeted in Yemen with U.S. weaponry. And in fact, I've seen reports that not only are American advisors in the control rooms of where these airstrikes are being done by the Saudi coalition in Yemen, but also UK advisors are in the room as well. And they've bombed over 100 health facilities in Yemen. Where is the headline news for that? I mean, does our media not talk about anything that the U.S. or our allies do? And like I said, when we hit the when we hit the Doctors Without Borders hospital in Afghanistan, it did make headlines for about 2 hours. By the next day, it was buried in the headlines. We were one of the few media outlets that were still covering this thing days after weeks. We're still covering the updates, the people dying.
Thanks to people like Claire and Justin. I'm not even going to take credit for that. It's thanks to people like Claire that stuff still gets pushed out there.
Exactly.
You know why it wasn't picked up by mainstream media? Because Syria doesn't have an ass like Kim Kardashian, homie.
Apparently.
Have you seen it? Assad don't have an ugly wife. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, but she don't have an ass like Kim Kardashian. Come on now.
I'll tell you what.
Kanye West married Kim Kardashian. Come on now.
Bashir al-Assad ain't on Twitter right now asking Mark Zuckerberg for any money. So
I'll tell you one thing about the whole pop culture stuff. We cover this on the Anti-Media Today, and we really don't cover this type of stuff very often. But Kendrick Lamar, I'm not the greatest fan. I like some of his music. But he really did have a great performance at the Grammys that really drew some attention to mass incarceration, man. That was a great performance.
I'm the music snob of all of us, and I'll tell you this. I really appreciate what Lamar's message was last night. I really appreciate what he was trying to shine a light on. I find it unfortunate for the American people that they're interested in really horribly boring music, and it's not good music at all.
Hey, now, Alabama Shakes did pretty good. Come on now, Alabama represent.
I remember when Britney was still hanging around, man. Before they were famous. And she's got a good now. Good for her. But yeah, Kendrick Lamar, it doesn't matter. Music's boring. Who cares? He made a good message. I would rather see a guy doing what he did, trying to shine a light on something important for the world, than see Kanye West throwing a tantrum over, somebody investing some money in him. So
there you go, man. Every now and then, these pop figures can make a difference. It ain't gonna be Kanye, and it ain't gonna be Kim Kardashian, but Kendrick is doing a little something with what he's got going. That's kind of cool. And that's at least a little positivity to, what's going on, even though he's drawing attention to a subject that is very negative. I mean, mass incarceration.
Every subject's negative. What subject is positive?
Before we finish off here, man, Hillary Clinton and the media handing her the minority vote here, she's responsible for mass incarceration, at least partially. I mean, she has done more to incarcerate African Americans in the United States than any other candidate running in the race. And she's up there acting like she's going to go and fix racial issues in the United States.
Listen, lesbians, I think, are a minority in this country. Give her a break. For real. That's it for us. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
Later,
Clear.
man.
Thank you, Nick.
Mwah.
Night,
That's it
fellas.
for us.
See you, Clear.
Anti-Media will be back tomorrow night. This is the host, Ashton Gibson, with me again, running my mouth for no reason on Thursday. Anti-Media Radio out.
Peace.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.